Hello and welcome to Bucks Podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anthony Deneau. Along with me, as always, Terrell Drevick and Kyle McEwen. Fellas, how we doing tonight? Terrell, we'll start with you.
I am fantastic on this Friday, ready to rock and roll and talk about Milwaukee Bucks, even after a loss. How about you, Kyle?
I'm groovy, brother.
All right, glad to hear it. So, as Terrell said, Bucks lose tonight. That's okay. Just a couple days ago, they clinched the number one seed by beating the Bulls. Big week. The Bucks also beat the Wizards, and keeping distance basically between them and the Celtics from getting the first overall seed. With the Bucks lost tonight, they can't get to 60 wins, but they already had everything locked up. They were sitting their rotation guys. They were sitting all their starters. They were sitting anyone who comes off the bench, really, except Jay Crowder, who they're still kind of ramping up for the playoffs. He had 24 points in 25 minutes, his second start of the season. The only other rotation guy we saw, Wes Matthews we saw for a little bit in the fourth quarter, but Javon Carter did get some minutes. But really, this is one of those games we haven't seen that much this season. But the last few years, Coach Bud has been known to really rest all his regular rotation guys and go with his two-way contract guys, his end of the bench guys. We saw Myers Leonard get a start and play a ton. We saw it was the Lindell Wigington game. Our man from Nova Scotia, Oak Island, represent. Marjon Beauchamp and Goran Dragic. So when you play 82 games, I find a lot of entertainment in this kind of game, especially with the Bucks not doing it so much this season and waiting till they had the number one seed and home court advantage throughout the playoffs all wrapped up. Terrell, do you get some enjoyment out of these, especially with such a long season?
Yeah, let's start with Jay Crowder here first. So he's in the rotation for there's the starting five, and there's Bobby Portis, and then Jay Crowder off the bench. So whenever he comes in the game with the starters, the regular guys, he doesn't throw up as many shots as he would if he was playing with the guys like he did tonight. So it was more of a showcase show for Jay Crowder. He went 10 of 12, 4 of 5 from 3 with 24 points. And yeah, I thought it was entertaining just to watch him throw up some shots, be more aggressive shooting. And then also, yeah, Wigginton, he had himself a night. You know what? A game like that where he's more of a shooter in my eyes, but an outside shooter that is. But the way he was taking the ball to the hoop tonight, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I do want to make the trip up to Oshkosh in the future and go watch him play for the Herd. Like he did pretty well tonight. His stat line here is 10 of 20 from the floor, 25 points, and here's a big number, 11 assists tonight.
He was a lot of fun to watch. He pulled out some fun dribble moves to get open shots on. Uh, he had Jaren Jackson on him at one time and did this like behind the back, kind of like a step away shot that was a lot of fun to watch him bang in. But there was no way the Bucks were going to win this game, so it was kind of just fun to step back from the worry of what the score was and just watch everybody play. Because if you're worried about the score, that's just irrational, knowing that the Grizzlies were essentially starting most of their starters, and then the Bucks had Jay Crowder out there, which Jay Crowder was shooting great, perfect for the good start of the game. I think he had like his first 12 points. He was 5 of 5 from the field with 2 3-pointers. So it was a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, you wouldn't want to spend too many games going through this.
And back on Jay Crowder too. This game tonight, it made me look up what really happened in Phoenix. I know we touched on it in some earlier podcasts this season about how he lost the starting role in spring over the summer to Cam Johnson. And I mean, Jay was starting. He was starting regular season games. I mean, the guy doesn't really miss games when he was with Phoenix. So did some more research here, and GM James Jones, I guess he didn't want to pay Jay, who Jay thought he should be paid 11 million, and I guess the GM said, you know what, I don't think you should be paid 11 million. You're not a Maxi Kleber guy. Um, kind of made Jay a little mad. I would be mad too, especially with if I was putting him a stat line like Jay Crowder was.
That's so
So
funny. You just said, Jay Crowder, you're not a Maxi Kleber. As if Maxi Kleber's ever really proven much of anything in the NBA. That was hilarious, dude.
I mean, for he's saying like the guys in his position and how much they're making and his comparables.
Right. And there's an argument that Maxi Kleber's a better player than Jay Crowder in some respects. But it's also the fact that you would name drop Maxi Kleber on a Bucks podcast, because I bet you there's probably 25% of people who are like, who the is Maxi Kleber? Anyways,
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a new name. How about Larry Nance? Larry Nance was making around 11 million a year, and Jay's like, you know what? I should be around 11 million. Well, good thing that the Suns ticked him off, because Milwaukee, they have Jay Crowder for $10.2 million this year. I think that's a steal for what he brings. The 3-and-D kind of guy. Let's be ready for a playoff run, Jay. Let's do it.
so James Jones was essentially saying that the reason they didn't keep Jay Crowder is it was a money thing, and that's why they were making I don't even buy that. There must have been some kind of ego issue, or Jay Crowder just not accepting the bench role, because it made they probably looked at their team and just said, look, Cam Johnson's somebody who we need to put into that starting role, see if he can be a part of the future, because I think they still need to. Did they sign Cam Johnson to an extension recently? They might have, but yeah, it's, I don't know. I'm not buying that it was just that little money issue, because Jay Crowder got super butthurt to the point that he sat out half the season. So, anyway,
Cam Johnson did sign a 4-year, just under $20 million extension. So that he'll be running with that contract for the next few years with the Brooklyn Nets. It is something that he signed originally with Phoenix.
okay.
Just the comparison guy, I guess for me, especially with the situation, it's hard not to just always talk about the PJ Tucker in 2021, right? PJ Tucker this year, 10.5 million. Jay Crowder at the same, and that's very interesting to me. Those guys are almost on the exact same, basically making the same amount of money. PJ will be on that contract for another 2 years, never getting more than, even to 12 million. Jay Crowder will be a free agent this summer. I imagine he will get slightly more than what PJ is getting in his current contract. Jay Crowder a few years younger. Very interesting though. I mean, they're there to be that defensive force really, and guard one of the other team's top wing players and be able to do all the switching and still hit threes. You get different things a little bit with each guy. PJ is the better defender and probably better passer, whereas Jay is a better scorer and rebounder. They both give you different things, but when Jay Crowder's hot, he can do things like tonight. He had 24, 25 points, got his first start just against the Wizards, either on Sunday or Monday, and had another 20 plus. I think he had 19 and 9 actually in that game. So when Jay Crowder starts, which is kind of what a lot of Bucks fans are hoping for, with Grayson, Allen, Pat Connaughton, both with right ankle injuries coming into the playoffs, that Jay Crowder would maybe be that fifth starter, and he's shown in his 2 starts so far that he can light it up. And he actually made a comment over the last week about how maybe at one point he was too into trying to be the starter and focusing too much on that and not thinking enough about being a finisher and being there in the second half when it matters. And the Bucks have had so many awful third quarter performances the last few years. And that was a big deal the other night when he did get the start, and he was also against the Wizards, also starting not just the game, but on the third quarter, and coming in and scoring, I think, 10 straight points to start the half. And he said, that's a big deal to me. I was sick of complaining about us not being good at third quarters from the bench, and this was my chance to be in and do something about it, and so he did. So I like where his mindset is at, and even though he is more focused on being in at the end of the games, I would love to see him in the starting rotation, especially if we're still dealing with an ankle injury for Grayson Allen, which then put Pat Connaughton in the starting lineup, but then he got a right ankle injury. So now I do feel like Jay Crowder is kind of maybe the de facto starter, even though many of us would have wanted that to be the case anyway.
See, I don't know. There were plenty of nights where Javon Carter was the one replacing Grayson Allen when
And that
he's
was the
been
case
out.
against the Bulls. That was the case against the Bulls 2 nights ago. That Javon got the start at, I wonder if that was partially because Javon is a Chicago guy, or maybe they just feel like the matchups a little bit make more sense in that regard. I'm not exactly sure why that was, but yeah, Javon Carter's gotten plenty of starts this season, and you're right, that was the case on Wednesday night when they beat the Bulls to secure the first overall.
I think you just look at Javon as more of a perimeter defender, and that's probably why he wanted he wants another perimeter guy out there for defense. And Javon's fine, in other regards. Probably the most important thing to talk about injury wise is Chris Middleton being out these final 2 games with his knee soreness. What do we think it's a big deal? Are they just being cautious with it ahead of the playoffs? There was an article earlier today, or not even an article. It was just kind of like a 2-paragraph mention in Sham Sharania's piece on the Athletic. So, what are you guys thinking about this Chris Middleton thing? Are we concerned, or is it just kind of like, well, good thing it happened now? I guess maybe.
I'll start off. So, in maybe even back with the Pistons is when Chris originally had, I think, a torn in his ACL. And that is the knee that has always been monitored for soreness. It was last season against the Bulls in the first round of the playoffs. It was actually that he kind of twisted and hurt his other knee. I think it was his left knee. So that's not the one that is the issue. I think coming back from that injury from the playoffs last year, he wasn't able to do a lot of the off-season things that he usually does to kind of monitor and get the knee. It's kind of been a problem for him for over a decade now. And so because of that, that's why there's kind of been the start and stop with him and being available and whatnot. I'm not too worried about it. To me, you could even hopefully, to me, at the very least, you could sit him out the first 2 playoff games as well. I think that's when you decide, okay, we're already up to, do we want to play Chris now, or do we want to hold him out a little bit further for the second round series, which is going to be a tougher matchup. Still, it's not going to, I mean, it's going to be a good team, but it's not going to be Celtics or Sixers in the second round. That would be in the third round in the Eastern Conference Finals. So to me, you already have a week off, right? Then you give him those first 2 games of the first round. That's another potentially a week or 2 weeks from right now. I don't think you have to rush this back. I think it's okay. The MRI did come back clean, which was maybe something that Shams could have made a little bit more clear in the mention of the story, that the MRI came back clear. The Bucks are kind of just being cautious with this, and it is knee soreness that he has dealt with in the same knee for a long, long time. My bigger worry is obviously, yes, being healthy for the playoffs, but then how does this go with his $40 million playoff option and into next season, and what do all those things look like? But Terrell, at least like what Kyle's asking right now, at least for the playoffs, how concerned are you? This is why they got beat by the Celtics last year, so obviously there's some concern.
Yeah, maybe I have to browse the internet here on this one, but if that's the only report about Chris Middleton and a potential serious injury from Shams, like I think Woj would have said something. I think Zach Lowe would have said something about this on Twitter. But you know how the media is. If there's one report, everyone's going to get a hold of it, and they're going to turn the dial up to 100. And I haven't seen anything else on Middleton, so I'm leaning towards maybe this isn't that serious, and maybe we shouldn't be concerned. Also, though, we should probably look at Middleton's minutes. Like, he was on a restriction or a limited minute restriction. I don't know how or what his max minutes were coming down the stretch here in the last 2 months.
I don't think he got 32. Might have been his tops, which he hit once or twice, is my guess.
So
I'll check
maybe
it out.
that's still a
You're
concern.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, well, but that's just it. That's what's kind of frustrating to me or concerning to me is the fact that he's been unable to get healthy and stay healthy so far this year. So if and then as much of a history as he has with this team and playing together with these guys, you still want to build up a rhythm with each other going. I mean, I wouldn't want him to miss any playoff games, but if he's not healthy, do you end up going thinking about just bringing him off the bench for the playoffs this year to say like, okay, maybe we can't count on you for super big minutes, and we do want to save your minutes or your knees for the fourth, for later in the game. So might
And
be something we see them do.
you know what's crazy? Middleton's actually a good six man coming off the bench too. That style of player where if you need a big bucket in the corner, if you need a big three outside, or maybe you just want a mismatch and a turnaround post play, Middleton's that kind of guy. Like I think he is a great guy to come off the bench in the playoffs too.
He is, but you want him to be your third best player. I mean, or even second best player when he's really at his peak. So that's the frustrating thing. You don't want him to be limited and then have to rely so much on Giannis or Drew to be the guys every single night. It's Middleton's supposed to be that third option, someone who can come out and drop 35 in the playoffs and hit the big shots down the line and really, I mean, he's supposed to be the big shot maker.
Sure.
Yes, he's supposed to be the closer. Yep.
I will say this, that with Middleton coming off the bench, a lot of their success since he came back was with him as the sixth man, and maybe that allows Bud to stagger a little bit differently. And so since he's come back and they had their big win streak and everything, and it was a while before he actually started. And I want to say it was Giannis sat out, and that's when they decided to start Chris. And then since Giannis came back after probably another knee soreness situation.
Oh, hey, Terrell. So he zapped out. So we're sitting here. I thought you guys were both zapped out. Sorry about everybody for the lack of talking there. So Anthony's internet must have went out.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I
folks out there, pay your internet bills.
You know what? I wanted to talk about the fact that did you see online today there was some chatter about Thanasis or Thanos' ass on Antetokounmpo and the fact that he was only on the Bucks because he's Giannis's brother. And as true as that might be, it was kind of cool tonight to see Thanasis come out and really play with a lot of energy, have some good buckets, and get big minutes in this game so he could kind of shine after some haters were throwing around narratives on Twitter today.
Yeah, he when a game's kind of out of reach and you're playing that rec ball game and the game's kind of out of reach and there's that one guy who comes off the bench and there's like 3 minutes left of your rec ball game and this guy's still going hard. He's still going 110%. That
Yep.
yeah, that's the Thanasis right there. He always plays hard. I think that should be a message for life too. Just go all out, right? When your opportunity comes, just take advantage of it and just go all out. Doesn't matter
Hey,
what other people think.
if nothing else, he definitely has NBA athleticism. Like him going out there and running along the baseline and throwing down a jam, like that's always fun. I don't, and I'll take that from anybody.
hmm Hey, one thing I want to touch on the play-in series, the play-in tournament. I'm not sure if we're gonna have a podcast before the play-in tournament starts. So,
If nothing else, he definitely has.
oh hey,
So annoying.
we
Sorry.
know this guy.
That's all right. Hey, we're still going, bud. But we
Yeah,
both
no,
sat here for like a minute of
and
dead
you're like,
silence. So
yeah.
you're gonna look at the tape, and it's gonna be that way. It's just gonna be dead silence. And then I started to see Terrell's head moving around, but on our screen, Anthony, you just froze. It was kind of scary. It was like some witch had cast a spell on you.
Um, well, just to summarize what I was saying before things went out on my end is that I'm not too afraid of Chris coming off the bench for the first couple rounds. And in some ways, I think that benefits him because he can really run the second unit and be that top playmaker. He can have the ball in his hands a lot more. And that's really what got his shot going this season. So ultimately, not too worried about it. But it sounds like you guys were talking about Thanasis a little bit and maybe the report that
Yeah, just that
Gary
Twitter
Warfel.
stuff.
Yeah.
Wait, what
So
did Gary Warfel say today?
so this is what happened is that Gary Warfel is the one who was asking other NBA executives whether or not Thanasis would be on another team's roster. You know, is he an NBA player basically? So this whole thing that NBA Central was sharing on Twitter and the three execs that said whatever they said, that was from a story from Gary Warfel and Gary Warfel's blog and his own website. And so once Bucks saw that he was the one listed, they were like, "Oh, this is a bunch of garbage anyway." And so I really do appreciate Bucks fans coming to the support of Thanasis and being and just like Thanasis, if he actually played regular minutes, if he was on like the Spurs or something like that on a team that was tanking or actually had a chance to get better at basketball, I think he would be much better. And we actually saw it. There was times he's scored. He's put up 27 points in the league. If you want to see a bunch of players who don't have career highs of even 25, I mean, Bucks fans were showing up today and saying like, "Hey, this guy, if he got the minutes, he could definitely play." And in terms of value and being on like a $1.7 million deal to 2.1 million, there's a lot worse things you could do than have an energy guy who's big for your clubhouse, the fans love, his teammates love, and can be that kind of energy guy at times. And when he comes in at the end of the game, like I don't know, it's like having Boban. You know what I mean? Like okay, how really useful is Boban Marjanovic? You know what I mean? Like he's just an at the game kind of you get excited having him in, whereas I think that can do a little bit more and be irritable at times to whether it be a Blake Griffin or other players. I know games tend to laugh at Thanasis and some of his antics, but as a Bucks fan, I do find it very entertaining. And for how he's making, how important he is to Giannis, which we saw a few weeks ago. Giannis got a technical. Thanasis calmed him down. Giannis came back in and had one of his dominant Giannis performances. Like that stuff matters. It just matters. Like we have a max contract in NBA. Giannis can only make so much money per year. Spending an extra $2 million to keep his brother around to keep him happy, really not a big deal. Not a big deal at all to me.
You see how happy Giannis is when his brother's out there having fun. Like Giannis is on the side of on the bench, rolling around, laughing, and like getting all hyped up. That might be more fun for Giannis than playing himself a lot of the times. So endearing his heart to those moments on the team, there's so many psychological reasons to do this and to have him on the team. And something I was sharing, just an appreciation of the fact that he is at least an NBA athlete. He goes out there and throws down dunks, and that's always fun.
See, and that's another thing is like in terms of athleticism, speed, jumping ability, he plays bigger than his size. In addition to having an extremely athletic skill set, he can block stuff off the backboard. He can chase down block. He throws down fun dunks. And you're right about Giannis gets as pumped about seeing him, and then you flip that around, and it's good to have guys on your bench who are engaged. And Thanasis, in terms of like the bench cheerleader or whatever, I think he's the best there is in the NBA. And that stuff just like you love the hype and the positivity. And I think that stuff really does matter. And having a locker room that likes each other, like that stuff, it matters. It matters in sports. And sometimes we don't think about that. And it's just like how a team looks on paper. It's like, yeah, how do they gel? How do they like each other? How do they play with each other? How do you have to spend 6 months with these guys and travel with them and eat all meals with them and shoot arounds at 8 in the morning, whatever the case may be? Like to me, all that stuff matters. Like it just matters.
How annoying did Myers Leonard look at times tonight?
God, Terrell, you want
Right?
to take that one?
I don't know if I can answer that because I kind of missed a lot of the game. Oops.
There was one moment where he was standing out on the by the 3-point line, and Wigginton or somebody else had the ball, and he passed it to Myers Leonard. Myers Leonard had started charging in towards the hoop,
Yeah.
and it was just like, where are you going? You don't ever do anything in the post, and
Yep.
it just didn't make sense. And then when I say he went charging into the post, he put his head down, like had his body at a 45-degree angle, and he was charging into the post. It was one of the dumbest looking things I've ever seen on an NBA court.
Wigginton yelled too afterwards, like, "Hey!" the guy who like end of the roster. He's on a 2-way contract, barely kind of holding on to his NBA spot at the moment, and he's yelling at Myers Leonard. It's pretty funny.
Here comes the big question from tonight. This is our second chance at looking at Jaren Jackson Jr. And now I'm going to ask about Defensive Player of the Year. Because Brook Lopez, he's in the running for it as well. So is it going to be Jackson Jr. or are we going with Brook Lopez?
Kyle, I'm interested what you have to say.
I mean, ultimately, Jaren Jackson Jr. has a bigger impact because he guards all over the place.
What's the games played difference? Because I know Jaren Jackson Jr. is
He didn't miss that many games.
okay.
I
That
mean,
might-
he
that might
was
be the
only out
edge.
for like the first month, maybe.
Okay. I'm trying to.
I know Brooke never misses games though. But
Right, like even tonight is
63
63
for Jaren.
for Jaren, and Brooks probably between 75, and this is only the second time I can recall Brooks sitting out this season. It's probably close to 77, 78 games.
That's
Dude. Sorry,
That's
go ahead.
crazy. That's crazy how close it is, though. We're not even talking about stats because their stats are comparable. We're talking about who's played more games. That's who we think is more deserving. That's how close this run is going to be for Defensive Player of the Year.
Does Brook get discounted for playing with Drew and Giannis? Does that hurt his case in some ways?
You could say that, but you could also, I mean, shoot, Chris Middleton's supposed to be a good defender, but he's been, not necessarily locked in there or as good this year.
Correct.
Bobby's been a better defender on the Bucks than he ever was anywhere else. A lot of it from Bobby's telling, from cajoling from guys like Chris Middleton, pumping him up and telling him to be a better defender.
Very true.
I lost what I was talking about there. Oh, Jaren Jackson Jr. I love seeing his big scoring games because that to me has been one of the more frustrating things about watching Jaren Jackson Jr.'s growth on this Grizzlies team. Recently over the last like 2 months, he started playing 30 minutes a night and playing bigger minutes than what we used to see him. And there was a big time throughout his career that he was limited by foul trouble, or his ceiling was limited often by foul trouble. But even in those times where he wasn't in foul trouble for whatever reason, Budenholzer disciple over Coach Leroy Jenkins over with the Grizzlies, he just always was limiting Jaren Jackson's minutes, and now you're seeing with the bigger minutes, you're really seeing these 36-point performances, 40-point performance from Jaren Jackson, and he's got that. When you watch him, he's got arguably what can be a more diverse offensive game than Giannis. I mean, we're not seeing the same amount of passing from him, but he can dribble the ball, he can shoot off the dribble, he can score from all over the court in many ways. It's just been funny that the Grizzlies have not made Jaren Jackson Jr. being a big part of their offense more of a focus. Like it's been Ja Morant, it's been Desmond Bane a lot in the last 2 years, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is an MVP, dude. I mean, Morant can get in that conversation, but Jaren Jackson Jr. can be a multiple time MVP, win you a championship, Giannis Antetokounmpo type of player. And it's just kind of strange that we haven't really had many people talking about him at that big of a level yet. It's cool that he's getting the Defensive Player of the Year talk, though, and it's pretty deserving for sure. But I guess he does have defensive players on the team. In Steven Adams, yes, he's been out a lot this year, but Dylan Brooks is regarded highly as a defensive player. Desmond Bane's a good defensive player. So, like,
Ja Morant had his best defensive season this year. That's not saying much, but this year his metrics were much improved as an on-ball defender.
So, I mean, the whole team is generally regarded as pretty good defenders and overall.
Oh, Terrell, you have something to say? I kind of want to get into the weeds about Jaren Jackson Jr. and his draft day, but you got something?
All right, go ahead. I got a little bit of a wrap up here with the Memphis Grizzlies and a prediction. And who do you think they're going to play? Because they locked up the 2 seed today. So they're going to play the 7 seed. Obviously, that's going to come off the playoff tournament or the play-in tournament. And the Grizzlies have seen a little bit of weaknesses tonight.
Vulnerability?
Hell yeah.
Vulnerability. Sorry.
Whoa. Whoa.
Vulnerability. So, have
you ever seen a Grizzlies boner?
Oh boy. So
it's Friday night.
Terrell, keep it together. Can you?
I'm sorry, man. I'll stop
I'm not
with
the
bad
one.
jokes.
All right, 7 seed here. New Orleans Pelicans or the Los Angeles Lakers. Which team is more dangerous, and which team could probably take down the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round of the playoffs?
Both teams. And I like the Pelicans. The Pelicans didn't have Zion for last year's playoff run. Sometimes I think being in the play-in games, you get a little bit of momentum going into the first round. And as opposed to these teams, even though they're a top seed, they've had a week off. So if you... I really like this Pelicans roster, man. I like them at pretty much every position. They're only getting better. They're such a young team, and they get better. They can probably the streakiest team in the NBA. Like they can lose 10 straight, but they can also win 15 straight. This team has playoff experience together, and they did it without Zion last year. I think they can do it again this year. I would not count the Pelicans out whatsoever.
I agree with that, Anthony. I think both teams are hot right now. Pelicans are 8-2 their last 10. Lakers 7-3 their last 10 games. Out of those two teams, which team is more dangerous? I do agree the Pelicans probably could match up well with the Grizzlies.
I liked your answers a lot, Anthony. They're both threats to the Grizzlies, and I wouldn't be surprised to see any team come out of those matchups. If I do think the Pelicans are the most implodable, though. Like you said, they're streaky. I don't trust them to dominate, even if they might have the best accumulation of talent out of all those teams in certain regards. Some of that's just due to the fact that Trey Murphy is still kind of emerging into. Well, he's still earning trust in our minds. I think in a lot of people's minds about his reliability because we haven't seen him necessarily. We've seen him now have a good regular season, but can he then proliferate that in the playoffs?
Yeah, very excited. The play-in, I'm not sure it's the best route for the playoffs. I want to ask you guys about this because these top seeds don't know who they're playing in the first round, so they're like the last to find out who their opponent is. So you have a week off, but then you're not really sure who you're preparing for. Some have brought it up this week. maybe it was Kevin O'Connor and Nick Wright about top seeds choosing kind of a draft of opponents. You choose who you play in the first round. What do you guys have you guys considered that? Do you guys have an opinion on it?
I think that'd be neat. Like if you got to choose, if because you're the first seed, that gives you another incentive to get a higher seed. First seed gets to choose who they get to play in the playoffs.
And there's less sitting guys that way too if you're trying to go for a top seed by making securing your opponent, which I like that as well as a minor aspect.
And then what if a big injury happens right before the playoffs too, like with the
Sure,
Brooklyn
Steph
Nets?
Curry. Okay,
Or
there you go.
with the trade,
Sure,
the
Steph
Brooklyn
Curry
Nets
goes
were-
down, or I get what you're saying. Yeah, an injury happens, and a team that's a 3 seed, you're like, oh, their superstar's out. He got hurt in the last week of March. Yeah, I'm gonna choose them as my first round opponent. That's really interesting.
I love this. And then
Yeah.
the fact that you could make that choice and then fudge it up, like it would make losing all the worse. If you're sitting there at the
Yes.
top, and
Like,
you're
oh, you called us out?
yes,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
oh man, that I love it. Where did that idea come from? That's the first time I've ever even heard of that.
Yeah, I heard it this week. I think it was Kevin O'Connor, the Ringer, and Nick Wright, and I want to say those were the two who were saying that would be a really fun way to go about it, and I'm all for it. I think that would be a more fair way of going about the current setup than having the plan where teams don't, the Bucks won't know who their opponent is until 2 or 3 days before they play, whereas teams with mid seeds, they're gonna be prepared for each other the whole time. So I think that'd be a fun thing. Yeah, Terrell?
You want to talk Eastern Conference play-in tournament right now? Predictions
Let's do
for the
it.
last 4 minutes here? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So just to give our listeners the whole spiel of the play-in tournament. So it's 7 through 10 seeds. They will do a play-in tournament. Make it easy for you guys. The 9 and 10 seed play each other. Whoever loses that game is eliminated. They're done. Now, 7 and 8 seed, they'll play each other. Whoever loses that game will play the winner of 9 and 10. And the winner of that game they're in the playoffs. They've locked up the 7 seed. So, with these
So
teams
basically, a 7 and 8 seed have 2 chances to make the playoffs, whereas the 9 and 10 seed only get 1 chance.
here, correct.
But you have to win 2 games if you're a 9 or a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the teams here are the Miami Heat, Atlanta Hawks. I was going to say the Falcons almost.
Oh, I
Whoops.
heard you.
The Toronto Raptors at the 9 seed, and the 10 seed, the Chicago Bulls. So out of those 4 teams, let's go with, as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, which team do you want to play as the 8 seed?
The Bulls.
Yeah, I agree.
I
Which
wouldn't
team
mind the Raptors.
I was gonna say, which team is the most dangerous team out of those 4 teams? Though I think the Raptors are the most. They're the dangerous team. They've had so many injuries this year that they can never piece together a starting lineup.
Mhm.
And now that, I mean, it seems like they're still trying to figure things out. But out of those 4 teams, I still think they're the most dangerous team.
I do too, just because they've got Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby. They've got Pascal Siakam. All
Yep.
3 of those guys are legitimate good defenders who can
Portal
match up
now, protect
with,
the rim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm not totally counting that. I just, as a Bucks fan, that's the one team the Bucks haven't beaten in the playoffs this decade. In this version of this team, they lost to the Heat in 21, who went on to the Eastern Conference Finals. They beat the Heat next year and actually played it so they made sure they faced the Heat in the first round in 21, the championship year. That year they also went on to face the Hawks. Last year they beat the Bulls in the first round. Back in 2019, they lost to the Raptors, who went on to win it all with Kawhi. The Bucks have not beaten the Raptors in the playoffs, so that is I guess that was kind of my reasoning. But this Heat team, they're a team that I think takes it easy in the I think they've been together for so long, and Jimmy Butler even said it, like, it's not until after the All-Star game that he starts playing real ball. And I think that's because guys get bored because there's so many games, and it's really just about staying healthy in many ways. And this Heat team has a lot of playoff experience together. They have beat the Bucks before in the playoffs. They have kind of a chip on their shoulder and a revenge because the Bucks got the better of them 2 seasons ago. And so that one is just interesting to me. However, in terms of depth, the Heat just don't have the depth. So
There you go. That's just
the-
it. You look at that Heat roster, and it's after you get through Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, it's not scary. And like they don't have enough size to throw at the Bucks size.
yeah, that's fair. The more you mention it with the Raptors wing defenders, that could be the scariest. We didn't really talk much about the Hawks, but they're
Because who's afraid of any team that's got Trae Young?
okay. All right, that
I'm
brings
sorry.
me-
You can't you have to build around him in a very specific way, and they have a good team, but they do not have a championship team. I just don't know if you can win with Trae Young as your championship guy. Also, because the way he plays the game, he decided to start being a draw foul kind of guy,
which
which
sucks.
it's not fun. He came into this league looking like he was going to try to be a Steph Curry shoot off the dribble, 3-point crafty scorer.
Yep.
He turned his crafty scorer stuff into a draw fouls in an obnoxious way
Yep.
that it just isn't fun.
There are guys his size who have proven to at least be pesky defenders. You know what I mean? Like, he might be slimmer than Patrick Beverley, but in terms of height, he's not that far off. Like, you can at least give effort on defense and not get crushed in every pick and roll. And I think their coaching situation's a little bit better now, and I like the Hawks over the next couple years. I love Jalen Johnson, Wisconsin kid. Got to cover him when he was in high school. I like Onyeku. I like DeAndre Hunter. They have some fun pieces. DeJounte Murray too is a two-way player. I think though that I don't know. I'm interested to see how the Hawks go with Trae Young and if they do decide to unload him somewhere. But that brings me back to a point I wanted to get to earlier about this draft a few seasons ago. So, number 1, the Suns took DeAndre Ayton. Number 2 was Marvin Bagley to the Kings. Number 3 and number 5 was that Trae Young, Luka Doncic, Hawks Mavericks trade. Number 4, that was Jaren Jackson Jr., if I'm not mistaken, to the Grizzlies. So, Kyle, I wanted to ask you this. Of the 5 players I just mentioned, so we know Marvin Bagley's out, right? He would be much later in the draft.
Garbage.
Would you, as the Suns, would you have taken Jaren Jackson Jr. over DeAndre Ayton or Doncic?
Oh, I mean, I thought Doncic was the what he can do on offense was you can't miss. Jaren Jackson was the upside of what he is becoming of the two-way player, but what we had already seen from Doncic in international play, I didn't think it was just dumb that he wasn't the first overall pick. And the whole idea that like, oh, we can't put this guy next to Devin Booker, like Doncic.
Well, now they have Durant next to him anyway, so it's like you already, you know what I mean?
It's
You've
just
got,
dumb.
yeah.
They've got Durant and Chris Paul next to him. Like they
Yeah.
went out and got a primary ball handler to play next to him. What? So it was just stupid. But I mean, Jaren Jackson. Look, the other thing about DeAndre, DeAndre Ayton wasn't the. I don't think this is revisionist history to look back at it and say that there were questions about who should be the first overall pick.
Terrell, do you would stick with DeAndre Ayton, or how would you break that down?
Yeah, I would stick with DeAndre Ayton. They were looking for a missing piece of their team, and that missing piece was they needed a center. And I think
Also, the hometown kid in a lot of ways, right? High school in Arizona, college at Arizona.
I
Suns
thought
had the
you
first overall pick.
immediately I thought Bahamas. I was like, really? Oh, okay.
Well, just he had spent years in there. Like I think
But
he's
yes.
the first player ever, right, to go high school, college, and pros all in one state. I thought that was the case. I could be wrong.
Wow.
All right. Well, we got a big weekend coming up. We got the Raptors on Sunday, a potential playoff preview. We'll see if the Bucks decide to sit a bunch of guys. It's the last day of the NBA season. It'll be April 9th. So every game is an early game. For me, games start at 10 a.m. For you guys in the Central, games will start at noon or 1 on the East Coast. So we'll have a lot to talk about, but we won't quite know who the Bucks' opponent is in the first round. But Terrell did a good job breaking it down of who those possibilities are with the Heat, Hawks, Raptors, and Bulls. Before we get into the weekend, you guys do anything fun this weekend? Are you watching any fun shows? What are you streaming? Terrell lost The Bachelor, so he's got a lot of time on his hands.
I watched most of the what's it called, Half Bastard, or something, or there's some show on Netflix it's British, and it's like witches that one of the guys' sons is a bit whatever. It's pretty good. I liked it.
Kyle's got a potty mouth tonight, Terrell.
I hear
It's the name of the show, man.
Here's a really embarrassing story about a Netflix show I was watching. It was called Money Heist, and I watched probably 4 or 5 episodes until I finally figured out that their lips don't match the words, because it's a Spanish show. It was originally a Spanish show, and they just like put the English over the top of the words. I'm like, holy cow, it's too much wine. I think I gotta stop drinking wine. But that was still a good show. It got me hooked. First 3 episodes, 4 episodes. Next thing you know, I'm 2 seasons in. Yeah. But this weekend, well, I got this guy named JC. He's about to rise on Sunday, so I got to prepare for him.
Javon Carter, baby.
Different Javon Carter. His name is Jesus Christ. And
okay.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to go celebrate him and go look for some Easter eggs. Because that's how the Christians do it.
All right. We learned a lot about Terrell in just a matter of seconds.
Can't read lips and likes to go for Easter egg hunts.
You just can't read Spanish lips.
There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Well, this is I'm excited. We almost made it through the season, and we got the playoffs on the horizon. A lot of exciting stuff coming up, and we'll be pumping out episodes for the playoffs and getting things ready. So I'm very excited. Kyle, Terrell, thanks for joining me, and thank you to our audience for checking us out. We will see you next time.
I love you.